Senator, a lot of Democratic leaders are saying that the real question is not whether you borrowed some textual material, but whether your vision, which is supposedly one of your strong points, is real or whether it's borrowed. And they cite not only these examples, but the fact that you seek often to identify yourselves with the Kennedys and Martin Luther King and the activism of the 60s, even though your record is somewhat at odds with that you were not greatly involved in civil rights, you were for the war, and you even thought of running for office as a Republican. How do you answer those people?
No, well, first of all, we've talked about this a lot, you and I. That's not accurate, by the way. I mean, that's kind of a... Anyway, that with regard to my almost running as a Republican, that is not correct. What is correct is that when I got back from law school, my Democratic Party in the state of Delaware had less than an enlightened view on race. The race issue meant a lot to me. I could not bring myself to register as a Democrat. And you had to be 21 back in those days to register. And so I came back to Delaware, and I registered as a decline, independent, because I couldn't bring myself to associate with Richard Nixon and what he, I didn't mean in a personal sense, but what he stood for, that philosophy. And I wasn't comfortable with the Democratic Party, which at that time was more an old Southern Democratic Party. And so I registered independent. In the meantime, I worked for a law firm, clerked for a law firm that was a mainstream blue blood Republican law firm. And they tried to get me to join the Young Republicans. One day I'm sitting there and they asked me they always had the Young Republicans party at their office, Christmas party. And I'm a low man in the totem pole, so I had to go out and get the stuff for the party, for the senior partner. And the next thing you know, they asked me whether I'd consider getting involved and hold office in the Young Republicans. I said, I'm not a Republican. I don't want to be a Republican. And another instance that happened is friends of mine came to me and said, Bill Roth is not going to run. He was my next door neighbor. He's going to run for the Senate. Why don't you run for the Congress as a Republican? I said, I don't want to run for Congress as a Republican. I don't want to run for Congress. And so that's, this stuff about I was a Republican. Now, lastly, with regard to the 60s. During the 60s, I was, in fact, very concerned about the civil rights movement. I was not an activist. I worked at an all-black swimming pool in the east side of Wilmington, Delaware. I was involved. I was involved in what they were thinking, what they were feeling. I was involved, but I was not out marching. I was not down in Selma. I was not anywhere else. I was a suburbanite kid who got a dose of exposure to what was happening to black Americans when I, in my own city, worked there, the only white employee, as the only white lifeguard in this 13 or 14 lifeguards, to find out that many of these guys lived in that city their whole life, a small city, and never knew a white man. It was a revelation to me, and it appalled me. And I was 29 when I ran for the Senate, folks. Other people were marching, carrying banners. I was down here voting against the war. I came down here at 29 years old. So, the war was still on. So this notion that I wasn't involved, that I supported the war, I was not out. I am not, as you probably all figured out about me. I don't like dirty campaigns. I am not culturally one of those guys who likes to, I don't fit very well with, I'm not a joiner. I don't go out, I was out of sync with. By the time the war movement was at its peak, when I was at Syracuse, I was married. I was in law school. I wore sport coats. I was not part of that. I'm serious. What y'all don't seem to understand is some of you. I think you understand it. I don't think you're really being, well, I won't characterize it. But, there was a 4-year period there, folks. There's light years. When I was on the college campus, those of you who go back with me, 1961 to 65, Vietnam was like Nicaragua is now. So I find y'all going back and saying, well, where were you, Senator Biden? At the time, I think it's bizarre. And then when the movement did catch up, I was a 23-year-old guy, married. And look, you're looking at a middle-class guy. I am who I am. I'm not big on flak jackets and tie-dye shirts and, that's not me. I'm serious. But that's the period. So anyway, I want to get this straight, man, because I keep getting asked this all the time, and I'm not going to get this many in your room again until I'm inaugurated. So, you know, when I got finished law school, I came back. The most important thing to me in my life is my family. And I got back and I was going to have a baby. Flat out. That's what was important to me. And I was going to take the bar exam, which was a bear. You know, I mean, I hated law school. I really did. But by the way, go out and ask anybody in Delaware whether you think I was not a good lawyer, and ask any client I represented whether they think they didn't get their money's worth, and ask anybody in Delaware that ever watched me try a case to tell me that I wasn't a good trial lawyer. Go find anybody. I was a good lawyer. I am a good lawyer. If you want to find out more about that, come down at 10 o'clock, down at the hearing. So, you know, folks, I don't understand this.